What happened in that congressional hearing room wasn't supposed to make headlines. But when Congressman Thomas Massie stood up and looked FBI Director Kash Patel straight in the eye, something shifted. Something that would expose a cover-up so massive, most people still don't understand what they witnessed. I've been covering Washington for decades, but what I saw that day made my blood run cold. Because Massie didn't just ask questions. He held up documents, he named categories of individuals, and he forced Patel to admit something that should terrify every American who believes in justice. But to understand why this moment matters, you need to know what happened behind closed doors before Massie ever entered that hearing room. 3 weeks earlier, I received a call from a source I'd worked with for years, someone who'd never led me astray. They told me something was coming, something that would blow open the Epstein case in ways the public had never seen. I thought I was prepared for what would unfold. I was wrong. The hearing started like any other oversight session, routine questions about budgets and procedures. But then Massie's time came, and everything changed. He didn't ease into his questioning. He didn't dance around sensitive topics. He went straight for the throat. "Director Patel," Massie began, his voice cutting through the room's tension like a blade. "I watched your Senate hearing yesterday. You told Senator Kennedy there's no credible information that Epstein trafficked victims to anyone else. Is that still your position?" That's when I knew we were about to witness something unprecedented. Because Massie wasn't asking a theoretical question. He was holding documents, real FBI files, and he was about to use them to corner the FBI director in ways that would expose the entire charade. Patel shifted in his seat. I could see it from the press gallery. The man who'd spent months claiming transparency suddenly looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. His answer would reveal everything. "That's correct," Patel replied. "We have no credible information indicating—" "Stop right there," Massie interrupted, and the room went silent. Dead silent. "Because what I'm holding in my hands proves you're either lying to Congress or you haven't done your job." The documents Massie held weren't classified speculation. They weren't conspiracy theories from internet forums. They were FD 302 forms, official FBI witness interview reports, documents that Patel's own agency had created, filed, and somehow forgotten about when making public statements. Here's what those documents contained, according to the victims who spoke to federal investigators. Names, specific names of individuals Epstein allegedly trafficked victims to. Not vague references, not hearsay. Direct victim testimony naming at least 20 powerful men. Massie began reading from the files, not revealing names to protect ongoing investigations, but describing the individuals in ways that made their prominence undeniable. A Hollywood producer worth hundreds of millions, a royal prince, multiple billionaires, government officials, former politicians, a rock star, even a magician. But here's what chilled me to the bone. When Massie asked Patel if any of these individuals had been investigated, Patel's response wasn't denial. It wasn't outrage at false accusations. It was bureaucratic deflection. "Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files," Patel said. But notice what he didn't say. He didn't say investigations were opened. He didn't say these individuals were cleared. He said his agents would review the files. That's when Massie dropped the bomb that changed everything. "Have you personally seen these 302 documents where victims name the people who victimized them?" Massie asked. "I personally know, but the FBI has," Patel answered. Let that sink in. The FBI director, responsible for one of the most high-profile cases in modern history, admitted he hadn't personally reviewed the key documents containing victim testimony, documents that directly contradicted his public statements about there being no credible information. But Massie wasn't done. What came next exposed a level of institutional dysfunction that should horrify anyone who believes in equal justice under law. "So how can you sit here and tell the Senate there are no names?" Massie pressed. "Multiple authorities have looked at this material for years and nothing happened." Why? Patel's response revealed the heart of the cover-up. He claimed that multiple U.S. attorneys' offices from 3 different administrations had reviewed the same materials and found nothing actionable. 3 separate teams of federal prosecutors spanning Democratic and Republican administrations all somehow concluded that documented victim testimony wasn't worth pursuing. That's either the most remarkable coincidence in legal history or evidence of institutional protection that transcends partisan politics. The most devastating moment came when Massie asked about CIA connections. Have you seen the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein? Would they show it to you if you wanted to see it? Patel's answer was telling in its careful limitations. He could only speak for the FBI, he said, and couldn't confirm or deny whether other agencies held relevant information. In other words, the FBI director doesn't know what the CIA knows about one of the most internationally connected criminal cases in recent memory. When a case involves intelligence connections, banking relationships, international travel, and documented contacts with foreign nationals, the idea that agencies aren't sharing information isn't just bureaucratic incompetence, it's willful blindness. But the most infuriating revelation came when Massie asked whether Patel would personally meet with victims. These are the people whose courage in coming forward created the very files Patel claimed to be reviewing. Their testimony forms the foundation of everything the FBI knows about this case. Patel's response? He'd delegate that responsibility to FBI professionals handling the case, the same professionals who'd somehow overlooked documented victim testimony for years. The same system that had failed to investigate named individuals despite having their statements on file. Meanwhile, Patel had personally attended a White House event where his boss released selected documents to social media influencers. He had time for content creators, but not for the victims whose trauma created the case files he was supposed to be overseeing. The document release Massie referenced exposed another layer of institutional failure. On the same day Massie introduced a petition demanding full transparency, the FBI rushed out partial files. So rushed, in fact, that victim names weren't properly redacted. Women who'd already suffered unimaginable trauma had their privacy violated because the FBI was more concerned with managing political pressure than protecting the people they'd promised to serve. This isn't about partisan politics or conspiracy theories. This is about documented institutional failure at the highest levels of law enforcement. When victims provide testimony naming specific individuals, and that testimony sits in FBI files for years without meaningful action, the system isn't just broken, it's protecting the very people it should be investigating. The Epstein case has become a symbol of how power shields power, how institutional protection works when the accused have resources, connections, and influence that transcend normal legal processes. What Massie exposed that day wasn't hidden in shadows or secret meetings. It was sitting in plain sight in official government files that FBI leadership either hadn't reviewed or had chosen to ignore. Every American should be asking why documented victim testimony results in bureaucratic reviews instead of criminal investigations, why multiple administrations have reached the same convenient conclusion that there's nothing to see here, why the FBI director doesn't know what the CIA knows about a case with obvious intelligence dimensions. These aren't hypothetical questions about distant crimes. This is about whether our justice system works the same way for everyone, regardless of wealth, power, or connections. And based on what Massie forced into the open that day, the answer should terrify anyone who believes in equal justice under law. But here's what happened after the cameras stopped rolling. What I discovered in the days that followed would make your blood boil. Within hours, I started receiving calls from people I'd never spoken to before. Lawyers representing victims, former federal agents who'd been silenced when they got too close to certain Epstein connections. One former FBI agent told me something that still keeps me awake at night. "Megyn," he said, his voice shaking, "those 302 forms Massie mentioned, there are more, many more, and some detail events where children were present, children whose disappearances were never properly investigated. A victim's attorney sent me documents showing a pattern of obstruction beyond simple incompetence, email chains between federal agencies discussing how to manage public expectations about the case, memos outlining strategies to limit exposure of individuals named in victim testimony. This wasn't negligence. This was active protection. The most chilling revelation, 3 other House members had planned to ask similar questions during that hearing. But something happened the night before. Phone calls were made, pressure was applied. By the time the hearing started, only Massie was willing to ask the questions that needed to be asked. Think about that. Elected representatives were intimidated into silence about documented crimes against children. That's not politics, that's conspiracy. One victim, now in her 30s, had provided detailed accounts to federal investigators about being trafficked to 3 specific individuals. She'd given dates, locations, evidence. Her statement was one of those FD 302 forms sitting in FBI files. When she heard Patel tell Congress there was no credible information about trafficking to other individuals, she called her attorney in tears. Why did I come forward? Why did I relive the worst moments of my life if they were just going to pretend it never happened? That's the human cost of institutional protection. But Massie's questioning created an official congressional record that can't be buried or classified. Every word Patel said under oath, every evasion, every admission of ignorance about his own agency's files is now preserved for history. Within a week of the hearing, 2 additional House committees announced investigations into FBI handling of the Epstein case. Whistleblower protections were extended to federal agents with information about case obstruction. The establishment thought they could manage this story like they'd managed it for years, control the narrative, protect the powerful while claiming to serve justice. But they underestimated the American people's capacity for righteous anger when they see the system protecting predators instead of victims. What Massie exposed wasn't just about Epstein or Patel. It was about a fundamental choice our country faces. Do we accept a 2-tiered justice system where wealth and connections provide immunity? Or do we demand equal justice for everyone, no matter how powerful their friends? The truth is, in those files, the victims have spoken. The documents exist. What's missing isn't evidence. What's missing is accountability. And until that changes, cases like this will continue to expose the difference between justice for the powerful and justice for everyone else.